Hello, this is Casey Stubbs for the How to Trade It podcast. Very excited for a new episode today. And today on the show, I have Marina the Trader Chick. Thank you for being on the show, Marina.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Casey, so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to learning all about you and about what you have to share with the audience today. Can you give me a little bit of a rundown just on about yourself and a little bit how you got involved in trading?
Sure. So I began trading actually on my 40th birthday is when I went full in. I've always had a real interest in the financial markets. And 40 years ago, which was actually 8 years ago, because 2 days ago I celebrated my birthday, I decided to go full on, but be much more proactive than just like long-term investing or swing trading. So I went in all in and bought into an academy. And that's kind of how I began my day trading journey. It's been a lot of ups and downs, which I think is a very common road for the majority of traders that are actually really trading now. At the moment, I am 100% ES mini futures. I love to trade the ES. Basically, that's my instrument.
All right, good. So there's actually a lot of other little questions I have about that right off the bat. So you say there's a lot of ups and downs. Tell me about some of those specifically, if you can share some of them.
Sure. So when I started 8 years ago, well, I don't think it matters when you start. When I started, so today I think is similar. A lot of the academies, they're very high priced. And when I began my academy, it gave all these things, but for only 3 months, I could not figure out whatsoever how to set up my charts. I'm not a big tech person, so having my charts was a real issue, like with Ninja Trader, and nobody from the academy helped me, and my time was like running out, so I was really stressed about that. It took me like 3 or 4 months, and the guy extended for me to stay longer because of all the issues I was having. And then when I finally began the course, and some of one of the part of the course was like a trading room, and what I recognized is there was nobody teaching you how to start from the beginning, right? I felt like a music student who wants to play, let's say I want to play the cello, and I arrived to my music academy, but instead of being taken from the beginning of understanding how to hold my cello, how to read the notes or whatnot, I was immediately thrown into the harmonic pit and made to keep up with all these traders who, by the way, I probably have been thrown into that same pit and are now pretending they understand what's going on. And every time when I was asking any questions, beginner questions, because it wasn't about only what the instructor was teaching me, and it was there in his personal strategy. And if I don't follow it, is the end, because that doesn't go anywhere, right? Like the whole point is for you to be able to own the markets and be able to fly and thrive on your own. And every time I was asking super beginner questions, like basic questions about, I didn't, understand about support resistance areas, and I was constantly treated like I was supposed to be born with that information, and I wasn't truly explained, and just had to keep up with this expertise talk, and that was really difficult. And the other part, and basically, obviously, when you don't understand what you're doing and you're in a trade room, everybody's, catching these trades, and you feel like you have to be there too. And how stupid am I not to be able to do those trades? I started chasing these trades, losing money. I mean, it was a disaster. The other thing that the majority of places have taught me, and at this point, I spent over 20 grand on my education with private mentors, academies, conferences, one-on-one weeks, you name it. The majority of the trainers I recognize really want to push going for those huge targets. And the huge targets, they look really good on paper, right? But nobody talks about the huge losses, because when you have a big target, you have to have a pretty big risk. And if you're obviously not even understanding what the market is really telling you, sitting through those to get to that high target, it's a really bad feeling. It's very stressful, and it's basically everything. It worked completely against me on so many levels. But I really was determined. I put in so much my time, and I had two little kids, so I was taking away from my time with them, that I didn't want to quit, right? And after 2 years of really struggling, I'll never forget it, because I ended up losing almost $4,000 in one day. And it was, I mean, think of it, it was pretty catastrophic for me. And that's kind of, and it wasn't even only about the money. it was about the whole loss of time and energy and everything. So I literally laid down on my floor and with my face down, completely feeling defeated. And my husband's standing over me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And it felt like I was such a loser. Like I felt like a total failure. And everybody was telling me, "You got to stop this. This is ridiculous. You're losing money, blah, blah, blah." But, real traders, I think they all go through similar. And there's just something in us that tells us you can do this. And I did walk away actually, I didn't. I revenge traded for 2 more days. So I ended up losing almost $6,000, pretty much completely, all our money. I just could not, my ego was too big to accept that I just went through such a huge loss. So, anyways, after those 2 other days, which I didn't tell my husband about, I walked away. I had to walk away. I didn't know if I was going to come back at that point. I literally had a complete and total breakdown. And normally, when I recognize with breakdowns, you could either go one way and quit, or you could have a breakthrough. And I couldn't permit myself to quit. So I literally had a breakthrough, even though at that moment I didn't know I had a breakthrough. But I came back to my charts. I also was trading with 3 monitors. I had like 10 indicators because that's what I was being taught. And what I did was I stripped my entire charts. I literally just wanted to go to naked charts. And then I started to really learn what the market was saying to me, like talking to me. And that's when I started to understand that there's simplicity to the markets. And also, I'm trilingual. So I don't know if that really affected the way I began to look at it, because I was born in Russia, the Soviet Union, so I speak Russian fluently. It's my native language, but I was raised in the US and I came when I was 6, so English is my real language, right? So when you're young, you don't really learn how to learn languages, they just kind of happen. But Spanish, which is my third language, I learned in my later 20s. And when you learn a new language in your later years, it's a process. You first have to take whatever is being told to you, translate it in your head, understand it, and then you want to talk, and then you have to put that in your head, translate it, bring it back out. And so it's a massive process. And one day, though, you wake up and you just speak it. You just speak it. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. It probably took me about a year, but I don't have to now go through any translations. It's natural. I'm fluent. I'm not 100% fluent, but I'm there. And I recognize that the market talks to you. It literally talks to you. And when I started to listen to that market and really, really focus and pay attention to it, has been the evolution of everything I do now with my trading. And that's really, but it took years. It took me a good 3 or 4 years until I found that consistency and that understanding. And also being profitable, right? But I began being profitable, interestingly enough, through very small targets, which at that point I didn't realize is a whole strategy called scalping. So now I obviously know it is, but back then all I knew is that it was hitting my green and giving me, that confidence. And that's kind of the evolution of how it happened.
Good story. Very good story. I like that a lot. Just because it sounded pretty real. Just being in a tough place, and you had a choice. You either could have came back or never faced it again. So that's pretty good stuff. In the middle of that, there's probably another 10 questions I could answer or ask, but I'm gonna hit one specific one because you hit it a couple times, and that is the small targets. So, as someone that's also been in a lot of education, watched a lot of videos, done a lot of trading, given training, there is a lot of talk saying that it's very difficult to make money with small targets. The main reason being you have to win a very high percentage of the time if your trade size or if your wins are much smaller than your losses. So you have to maintain a very high winning percentage. And so I'm just curious of how you pull that off and why you think it's more effective than longer targets.
So it came down to probabilities. At this point, I am insanely conservative, and I also have a very, very solid strategy. So every single trade I take, it has a name. So I have different names for some trades. For instance, I call some non-divergence trades or magic zone trades. Like they have specific names, but it's pretty much semantics after now when I trade. However, when you have very specific trades and names, you can backtest. And backtesting is the magic of everything you will ever do in trading and quite frankly in life, right? So for instance, my magic zone trade, I have a list exactly what I look for when I look for that trade, only that trade, right? So I can backtest that, and I recommend, especially for my students and people in general, 45 trading days of that particular trade, not all your other trades. That's a whole other thing to see what is the probability of that trade winning. I mean, at one point I started with like 30 or 40 trades, and I'm now narrowed down to 10 trades that I love and know that they are 80% or more probability of winning. And if it's kind of like if the stars aren't aligned, I will not go for it, right? It's kind of, and people are constantly, wow, you're so disciplined, you're so patient. It's not. When you're driving in your car and you see a red light, you're not gonna question it. Wait, can I go? Should I go? Because if you run that light, chances of you either getting hit by a car or being pulled over by a cop, pretty high. And if they do, or if that happens, you can't be like, oh, I can't believe it happened. Well, of course, you just ran a red light. So if my green lights are not aligned for my trade, I just ran a red light, and now I have to suffer the consequence. So backtesting is key. It's key. It's key no matter what. If you're going for scalping or going for the large targets, how often have you backtested that trade? So a lot of people don't really understand the concept of backtesting. So I'm gonna give a little example.
Awesome.
For instance, I personally have had a lot of surgeries. Not something I'm very proud of, but it is what it is. I've had laparoscopy 3 times. I don't know if you know what a laparoscopy is. Basically, it's a non-invasive surgery. My first one was gallbladder. So gallbladder surgeries are pretty gruesome. Like they leave a huge scar. The laparoscopy, non-invasive, you could barely see it. Now, imagine 30 years ago, a doctor or a medical researcher said, you know what? I think a really great new technique would be non-invasive laparoscopy surgery. Now, instead of backtesting and researching and trying it on cadavers, trying it for probably years, instead, what they went and did was, you know, I have this idea. Tomorrow I'm going to go and operate on a live patient. I mean, it sounds ludicrous. Nobody would do that, right? Like
Right.
the back testing is the research and that. But it's amazing to me the amount of people who want to trade. They're like, you know what? That looks like a good trade. I'm gonna go for it live in the live market. They have no idea if it's gonna work. They have no idea, right? And that's back testing. So imagine a surgeon, before they operate on you, that particular surgery had been back tested and tested many years on different, I don't know, subjects, cadavers, you name it, right? Trades should go through the same process. It's our livelihood. It's where we make money. Why would you just donate it to the market? Just throw it out with a whimsical idea. So that's what backtesting is. So all of my trades, I've been backtesting for years. I could do them with my eyes closed, pretty much, if the setup is there. Like, completely get in, and at this point, I'm not even stressed, knowing that 80% or even some of my trades are 90% will work out. So that minimal amount, and if it loses, but that's part of the game, right? I mean, that's normal. But you don't want to lose 50 to 60% of the time. Losing 10, 20% of the time, then you're doing great. And that's pretty much what it is. It doesn't matter if you're going for short term, I mean, tiny little profits, or longer backtest. That's really my secret to it all.
It's a good secret. So, since you're sharing secrets, I'm going to get some more out of you right now. How does somebody conduct a back test? If they're looking at their charts and they have a setup that they want to test, what's the process that they would go through to do that?
Okay, so I'm not sure what platforms people are using. I personally use NinjaTrader, and NinjaTrader has this really cool feature called Market Replay. So obviously the best is to commit to 45 days or 60 trading days of simulation trading, back testing, right? But a lot of people get antsy or they want to put in more time. So Market Replay is literally taking whatever day in the past and going live with it. So you could also do Saturdays Sundays, evenings, right? So you could consider each of those as an actual trading day. Now, for instance, it's not about your trading day, it's about that specific trade. So, for instance, one of my specific trades is I use EMA lines as my indicators and the MACDs. I only use two indicators now. Very simple, and I only have one chart that I do everything from. Now, if particularly the magic zone trade, I have three EMA lines. If there is a certain space between two of those EMA lines and my MACDs have gone way below, let's say if I'm going for a short, way below the zero line and retraces to my main EMA line without touching the other one, as you can see, they're very specific. And that's when I enter and I look for 1 point. I'm always 1 point in, 1 point target, 1 point risk. Now, that particular trade, I gave it a name because that space between those two EMA lines, I call it the magic zone. So if that particular trade, which I just gave a name to, and all those specific rules that I follow, and exactly where the MACDs have to be at a minimal, all this stuff, right, that it has to really cross, then I look at that trade, and every time I see that exact setup, I'm actually very basic with what I do. I take the trade, and then in a notebook, I literally have the name of the trade, magic zone trade, and then two columns, yes, no. And then I put in, those little sticks that we used to do in like school back like 30 years ago, little sticks, and then you cross it, that's a 5. And that's what I would do. And then after the 45 trading days, that trade doesn't have to be every day, but overall time, you'll probably see it, probably once per day, maybe once every other day. Then you do the math at the end. And you're not only looking at the one, you're going to have probably several that you're spotting and that you've recognized. So like I mentioned, at one point I had 30, and now I'm down to 10 because at the end of those 45, 60 trading days, you then do the probabilities, and everything that was over 75% stayed. And then I did it again because at this point I've lost so much money that for me, I probably back tested for like 6 months, right? A lot of people don't have to back test that much, but this was me coming back from the huge losses, so I was very like my wounds were very open. So after that, I've literally stayed with the ones that are 80% and more. There are a couple that are a little bit more aggressive, so I might not go in with as much of a contract load. I would go with a lesser load. So that's really how it is. You need to really focus on the specific type of trade you're looking for. It's really cool if you give it a name because then it's much more recognizable with a list of exactly what you're looking for. And if it doesn't work, get rid of it. It's going to bring you down. Don't fall in love with it. Don't marry it. So that's basically how I went about my process.
So when you're saying that you were doing that for 6 months, was that like demo trading, or was that going back and looking at historical data?
No, this was pure demo trading. So I
Okay.
did a lot of daily demo trading, and then in the evenings, I was obsessed. I will not deny it. For the first 5 years of my trading career, I was obsessed. I sat in front of my charts for like 10 hours a day. Totally the whole point, the opposite of why I began trading, which was
Right.
the hour and a half of trading per day. So I traded in the morning, the market hours, and then at night I would do market replay. And then weekends, I had an extra I had 2 days, so I could have easily done 2 more days. So I was obsessed because I just could not permit myself to admit that I can't do it because you just know you can. And that's what it was. So yeah, it was total sim trading and market replay going back.
Very cool. Well, I actually have a question from one of the people on YouTube right now. He's asking, what MAs do you like to use?
So I use EMA, exponential moving averages, and I use 3. I use 20 for a short term, 52 period, and 135 period. So I use 3.
Thank you. I have a question too, because you use some terminology I'm not familiar with. You said you like to do tick targets or point targets. What was that?
Yeah. So the futures market, the ES in particular, it's per point. Everything
Okay.
you do is per point. You put in 1 contract or 10, it doesn't matter. And each point for the ES is worth $50. And in each point, you have 4 ticks. And each tick is worth $12.50. So you can never have a trade less than $12.50. It only goes in those 4 ways, right? You could either do 1 tick, 2 ticks, 3 ticks, 4 ticks, or whatever amount of ticks. Some people actually like to just talk about ticks when they do ES, But for instance, if they say, oh, I got 12 ticks, that means they got 3 points. I do 1 point, which is technically 4 ticks, but I think it's just easier to say 1 point.
So is that 1250 times 4?
Yeah, so it's $50.
Okay, and
It's not
so you do a $50 stop loss and a $50 target.
right, exactly. And
Okay.
in the ES Mini, it's very tiny. It's a very small target profit.
And how often are you doing that? Do you do that several times a day? How's that process play out?
So it depends on the market movement. Because yesterday, for instance, was FOMC. It was dead in the afternoon, but in the morning it was gorgeous. So normally between 1 to 3 trades. Yesterday it was an extra great day. It was 5 trades, which doesn't happen very often. But I'm really happy with 1, 2, 3. I mean, really, what else do you need? I'm done after 45 minutes, an hour, and that's it. I'm done. And
No
I have the whole
stress.
day to do whatever I want. Yes,
Yeah.
I've eliminated my stress. Also, the scalping really eliminates because they're so quick, within a minute to 5 minutes max. But when you're holding for those longer targets, I personally just don't have the stamina for it. I can't handle. It's too much stress, too much anticipation. I don't trust myself. I move my targets. I mean, it's just too much for me. But this, boom, boom. If it doesn't work out, I know I'm done. If it does, boom, I know I'm done. Pretty quick.
Very cool. So I was reading some of the other stuff on your website, and I had noticed that you said that, based on the story too that you shared about being thrown right into the mix, it was kind of interesting when you were sharing that. I had a visual picture of like a bunch of high school students playing in a musical band, and just thinking of the sounds that are coming from that.
Oh, horrible.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a good visual picture. But my question is, for the type of training that you're doing now, and when you're teaching people, what steps have you taken to simplify that, so to break it down so that the regular person can kind of comprehend everything?
So, so I talk always in analogies, like you just understood with the music. So everything I talk about is never in trading terms, it's in layman terms, so you will fully understand what I say. I'm down to 2 indicators. Even though I use 3 EMAs, it's literally just one indicator and my MACD. So and one chart. You can't get any more simple than that. I don't really know many people who trade off of one chart um, without having multiple instruments going on. I have one instrument, one chart, boom, I'm done. Um, so really, that's pretty much what it is. I could literally talk to anybody about trading, and they will fully understand. And I always had that problem to this day, and I've been doing it for 8 years, listening to people talking. I'm just like, what are you saying? Like, I don't even think you know what you're saying. People sometimes just like to pretend they're experts, and that's something that was a huge awakening for me, that day trading is not complicated. I was a fitness instructor and I'm a travel writer. So I have zero finance background, zero math. Oh my God, math freaks me out. So I don't have to know anything about numbers. I don't have that. I didn't come from Wall Street. I'm a traveler. I was a backpacker. I'm an expat. I live in Guatemala. So that really, I guess, makes it more accessible to people and helps them see that they could do it too. And then when they start to work with me, even more so.
Okay, well, that actually makes a lot of sense, and I think it's helpful to get things in terminology and to define what things mean, because you're right. Sometimes people say things that they don't really understand, and I do that too sometimes, so I try to get my language to where I understand what I'm actually saying, and that other people can understand me also. I have a question from Aaron here, and he is wondering what time frame chart you like to look at, since you're only looking at one chart.
Okay, so this is going to get a little bit confusing.
Oh, great.
I
After we
actually,
just talked about simplicity.
so I'll make it even simpler for
Yeah.
you to understand. I look at tick charts. So tick charts are not the same as ticks in the point. So that you can use tick charts for any instruments at all. So what is a tick chart? I use a 610 tick chart. I do not use a time frame. So it's very important to understand that tick charts are instead of a time frame. What is a 610 tick chart? So you could look at anything that you're using. It could be a candlestick, it could be a high-low bar, it could be just, I don't even know, like those oscillating bars, whatever bars you're looking at. Each bar has 610 transactions happening in the moment. So to me, because I wanted to remove as much indicators as possible, that totally eliminates the volume indicator, because you're literally looking at it in real time to see how many transactions are going on in that specific second. And the reality is, if you're sitting on a 5-minute chart, 1-minute chart, I don't care, 10-minute chart, doesn't matter. But if there's no volatility and the volume indicator is always lagging, how are you going to know the exact movement that's going on in the moment? So tick charts, they literally show you what is happening in that exact moment. So if I'm looking at my bar, I use candlesticks or high-low bars, and I'm seeing that the ticks are, that it's moving really slow. I have a tick counter. These are all free and universal indicators. It's not my personal. These are indicators that could pretty much be found on any platform. And you can see it counts down. So if I'm seeing it go really, really fast, that means the volatility is huge. It's awesome. It's fun. But if I'm seeing literally each tick going down, I just want to shoot myself. I don't want to be in that market, because there's a very high tendency for slow markets to be very indecisive. And I stay away from indecisiveness. That's really what it is. So I use 610, but again, you could use any one that you find most comfortable with, and it's instead of the time frame.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I haven't actually seen those tick charts, so I'll have to check them out. That sounds pretty interesting. Aaron actually chimed in and said that he likes tick charts too, so he's on board. He's on board with your discussion here.
What does he use? Which tick chart does he use?
Aaron, what tick chart do you like to use? And while he's answering that, I'm going to hit you up with another question.
Sure.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how to get in contact with you, how to find out what you're doing, what kind of things you're offering to traders that are wanting to learn some of these simple methods?
Sure. Well, you can find everything on the thetraderchick.com site. However, I do have a free cheat sheet, I guess. It's pretty much what I use with my charts that you can find for free. It's just go to makingofaDayTrader.com. But again, you can totally find everything on thetraderchick.com, and you'll be able to find it there. But if you want to go directly to the document, it's makingofaDayTrader.com.
That sounds pretty good. I'm going to check it out for sure. And the links to your website and to that are going to be published on my website when the podcast episode gets released in a couple weeks from now. So all the listeners have to do is listen to the description or look at the description and click the link below, and they'll be able to get access to all of that. And Aaron just finally responded, and he said that he likes the 128 ticks. So
really small, really fast.
Yeah.
Really, really quick. Okay.
So, okay. So again, thanks again for being on the show. Very useful. I am highly recommending that everyone go check out Marina at her website, and that is thetraderchick.com and makingofaDayTrader.com, right?
Yeah, but the Trader Chick is perfect.
Okay. But check those out and, educate yourself, learn a simple method, learn new ways. It's always good to try to break things down and make it simple. And if you've been struggling, I think a lot of people can take some encouragement from your struggles. You probably weren't thinking that at the time that you went through it, but now you went through it, you survived, and now you're making it, and so that's an inspiration to other people. So that's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. I know that that's going to be helpful to people who are in a very similar situation that you were in, and gives them a little bit of hope, and maybe will encourage them not to give up. So that's really good, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, and bye, everybody.